What I feared most greatly has come upon me. These words from the Bible express my reality. I lived my worst nightmare, the one thing I never expected to experience in my lifetime, and which I took intentional steps to avoid. If anyone told me I could survive it, I would have lashed out at them, quickly retorting in popular Nigerian parlance, God forbid, complete with the action of snapping my fingers over my head. Such was the strength of my evaluation of my inability to cope with such a situation. Let me share my background with you so that you can see things from my perspective. I grew up in a home where my dad was a serial cheater. My mom had 4 of us, and I was the only girl and second child. My older brother was only 11 months older than I was, but there was an 8-year gap between me and the next child. I was a very sensitive and intuitive child, and even though when I was quite young, I did not understand what was going on, I knew my mother was unhappy. I had caught her crying in her bedroom a few times, and when I came in, she would immediately clean her eyes and smile to cover up, but I knew. By the time my younger brother was born, I started to understand that all was not right between my parents, and by the time I was a teenager, I caught wind of what was going on because I heard them argue late at night after they thought we were asleep, or sometimes in their room. My mom eventually died when I was 16, and I knew she died of a broken heart. She started falling ill often, and she barely ate because she wanted to lose weight. But she didn't just become slim, she became gaunt. Apparently, she had developed a stomach ulcer which became perforated and eventually led to her death. I had a heart-to-heart talk with her months before she died, when she lost so much weight. I told her some of the things I had overheard, and she opened up and told me that my dad said one of the major reasons why he went outside their marriage was because she had grown fat. My mother was just a size 14, but she died at 38, trying to please my dad by losing weight. She went down to a size 8, but she lost her beauty and everything in the process. I hated my dad for a long time, not just because of what he did to my mother, but also because after her death, he brought strange women into our home and they treated us so badly. Whenever he realized they were ill-treating us, he would change the woman. All I wanted was to get out of that home and take my younger brothers with me. But at least I had the presence of mind to know that if I did not want to marry a man like my dad, I could not afford to be desperate. I could not leave home because my dad would not allow it until I was married. He did not even let me stay on campus in my university days. I got born again in my first year in university, and I became very committed to my faith from then on. My parents barely went to church, so I had an irreligious background. As I grew in my faith, I realized that this was one of the ways I could ensure that I did not marry the wrong kind of person. I took my time to decide, and I turned away many guys who sought a relationship with me. The person I eventually married was a very committed member of the fellowship too. His parents were both pastors, and when we got engaged in our final year, he was the evangelism coordinator of the fellowship, while I was the head of hospitality. We got married 3 years after we left school, and I was 25, while he was a year older. As far as I was concerned, it was a marriage made in heaven. We loved each other dearly, and we did everything right. He worked as an engineer in a telecommunications company, and even though I am a lawyer, I took a short course in education and worked as a teacher because That was my passion. We had 2 children in 3 years of marriage. I also had my youngest brother staying with me. I was mortified at the thought of gaining weight after childbirth, so I did everything I could during and after pregnancy to maintain my figure, and I did. Everyone complimented me for how beautiful and young I always looked. My husband was always quick to express how proud he was of me too. Everything was going great until I got a call from our pastor one day that I should come to see him that evening. When I got there, I saw my husband's car parked in the church. I immediately sensed that something was wrong. I met my husband already in the pastor's office, and when I got in, he smiled at me weakly, but did not get up to hug me as he would have done normally. I became very worried, but I managed to remain calm. Immediately I sat down. Our pastor said my husband had something to tell me. My heart was beating very fast, but I just stared as he held my hands and said, "Ifemi, I have offended you." I tried not to imagine what was coming next, but I knew. I just knew. I only hoped it was not true. My husband had cheated on me. The moment he said it to me, I started shaking my head vigorously in denial. It felt like I was not in my body. I could not speak. I kept shaking my head and staring straight ahead. He was explaining and I could hear him, but I was not processing it well. He had traveled with some of his colleagues for a week-long team retreat about 2 months earlier, and it happened while they were there with one of the young female engineers. The worst of it, she was now pregnant. I kept shaking my head in unbelief. By now, my husband was on his knees beside me crying and trying to take my hands, but I snatched them from him. Our pastor kept saying, "Kemi, please take it easy." I did not say a word to my husband that day, even after we got home, and for the next few days. I called the school where I worked and took some time off because I was sick. After a week, I had to go back, but I was not myself. Even I knew it. When I finally spoke to my husband, all I could ask was why. He did not really have anything to say. It was in the 3rd week that I started to realize I was sinking in my thoughts. My husband was sorry, unlike my father. He was practically pleading with me every day. I realized that my fear of having a husband like my father was preventing me from seeing the man I had for who he was. Yes, he did the same thing as my father, but he was not my father in any way. He was a good man who made a mistake, even though it was one we would live with forever. The girl was pregnant. We came through it. We went for counseling and we worked through the matter. The girl eventually gave birth to the baby, a boy, and upon my nudging, my husband had a test to confirm the child's paternity. Once it was confirmed, we took full responsibility for his upkeep and education, although he lives with his mother. He is now 7 years old and he visits his father and siblings during the holidays. I am not naive to think that the infidelity can't happen again, but we are taking steps and covering our bases to make sure that it does not. What do you think about recovery after infidelity? Is it really possible? What are the things to consider? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to hit the subscribe button and to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos.